All right, so our group was looking at what a couple of the other groups were looking at in terms of how do we improve teachers' impact on learners. Our particular group, one of the things that we learned from the 2 teachers that we interviewed was that the environment of a school was in itself a hindrance to how kids are learning and how teachers are doing their day-to-day work. So our point of view is to actually deconstruct all of that and instead look at, what were our key tenets in a design for a new school, specifically looking at teachers as facilitators and to basically support dynamic learning for students and to basically give a life in a day of a student. I want to introduce our student, Lucien, and his day.
What's up, Teach?
Not much. What do you want to do today?
I'd rather be surfing.
I think there are great things about surfing. Do you know much about what's involved in surfing? Like the physics of what's going on?
Nah, not really.
So why don't you spend some time kind of, go out into the water, but at the same time think about where your body is, what the board is doing, why the board is floating. And then later on, I'll get back to you, and maybe we can construct some activities for you to do so you can learn more about what surfing is and not just the sport of it.
Cool.
So at this point, we're going to pause on Lucien, and I am a lead teacher in this new school. I'm going to go wander over to a set of facilitators who are going to help me understand how to help Lucien learn something while he's engaged in what he's doing. So, teacher facilitators, what do we think we can do with Lucien?
So there's a couple things. I think this is a great opportunity for some experiential learning. Maybe we can hook him up with Laird Hamilton or get him sort of YouTube talking with someone who's done this. We should also think about whether or not we can connect some writing and comprehension to this. And I like your idea about connecting math and physics. We should also figure out if there's any interactive technology or whether or not, we could sort of have him do some sort of in-class description or design of what surfing is and teach other students.
And we want to show what we know, so be sure to write in both of your learning logs, that one for the younger students and the one for your older pals, and be sure to ask them some questions and show them what you know about first aid when you're a surfer.
It'd be easy to link up math with all the calculations, wave velocities, balancing. I think we can get you excited about math.
Similarly with physics, there's all kinds of lectures online that I can find for Lucien to look at once he's back at home.
So this kind of gives you a flavor that it's not just one instructor, but it's a team of instructors who are really looking at the health of each student within their school. And the idea here is that Lucien is one of many, and this entire team would be working not just with Lucien, but also with the other students in the class. And now Lucien, an adult, is going to explain some of what's going on in the background.
Okay, so I would imagine what I might be able to experience is I would come in with an interest, and the idea is that the school and its culture would develop deep learning modules and activities based around 21st century experiences, online experiences, activities that you can actually do in field trip type experiences, in class, out of class, design all different types of modules, and then these modules are invisible to the student, and but the structure is there, and the structure is strong, and they basically choose their own adventure, and they move through this learning trajectory that has been facilitated and cultivated by this group that is looking after their interests to build a deep conceptual understanding of knowledge areas that would relate and expand upon their interest. So you follow the passion, and then you build a holistic understanding and multidimensional understanding around that interest. And so you would build that learning trajectory among various age ranges, proficiencies, and cultural interests as well. So that's the idea.
I thought that was really incredibly interesting. And the things that I really like, so this is just going to be random because I didn't put them in any order. I love that it was cross-disciplinary, so it was sort of like a learning community, but I was trying to figure out, is it a learning community of one? Like, how do you connect the student back to maybe other learners? But I loved the approach that it built on interests. And so actually in my head, the first thing that I thought about was this kind of sounds like the very best homeschooling models. The way that you were approaching it and the way that you were saying that you could build on all of these things in the community. And so then I also thought about, not related to you, but sort of it just made me think, like, could we home college people? I don't know. But I love that, like, why is homeschooling only for K-12? Why can't we home college? I'm sorry, that was an aside, but that just came to my mind. The other thing that I really loved was this idea of the learning logs, one for older students and one for younger students. I think that's genius because, you know, it's that peer-to-peer kind of learning that we know works so well. And I thought that was very clever because at first I got nervous when you said in your learning logs, and I thought, well, who wants to do more than one? But I think they would because it's actually educating others. And then the last couple of things are I like the link to existing content online, so you're not recreating everything from scratch. And finally, what I really also thought was very interesting was how you talked about their structure, but the students can't see it. So it really reminded me of video games. You know, especially sort of adults who don't play video games think there's no structure. You're just kind of wandering around. But there's a ton of structure built into it, and that's what kind of makes you go down a particular path. So I thought that was a really great idea.
That was the methodology that drove the design, was the video games.
Oh, interesting. Well, I'm going to relate to the specific example you gave. My son, Ben, is a surfer. When he was in high school, I opened the local paper one day, and there's a big picture in it, and the caption was, Ben Doherty, tackles the surf as storm bears down on North Coast, right? And he's there in a wetsuit. You couldn't tell who it was, but his name was there. And it was pretty clear that it was in the middle of the day, and he cut school to go surf, And, so I said, Ben, it's one thing to cut school and go surfing, but, when they take your picture to get your name in the paper and have a record of it, that's another thing. And he said, well, if they were going to put my picture in the paper, I wanted my name there. So at any rate.
He could post that on Street Cred, actually.
Exactly. Ben is not someone that really enjoyed high school. He was a different kind of learner. And so when I thought of your example, a couple of things, I think one of the things that really attracted him to surfing was the surfing community, that he sought that out and connected to it more deeply than he did the school communities. And partly because it was independent and other things there. And so I was also reminded of Constance's presentation about, the games and how she said about their world rather than your world. And I think there's a little bit of a danger here of trying to impose, just as a parent, I do the same thing, but, impose a little bit too much on the child, what you think, like physics or other things that they need here. I think if you can make that bridge, that's fabulous. I like the trajectory idea. And I think if, as much as I would think that actually being able to recognize and talk about things like surfing goes back to the interests over here, finding a way to expand on that and really understand. Because I talk about like a project which is kind of in the make space of like, there aren't really no ways for surfers to record that performance that they do. There's no data associated with surfing. How could you use like a data logger on a surfboard or on a surfer to collect data and simulate it back or play it? So there's some really interesting things I think that you could play with here. But what fascinates surfers the most is weather, right? Is understanding reading the buoys and knowing the swells and watching weather patterns develop out in the West. So there really are areas that you can work with given someone's specific interest.
Well, I think building on that, I think what would be interesting is finding the unexpected learning communities out there, because I think, so I hadn't thought about surfers or their own community. What other communities would be interested in supporting students? There are lots of communities that we don't necessarily think of when we do those interest tests in high school about what should you be when you grow up. We wouldn't necessarily sort of come up with anything related to surfing, but yet there's a whole community of people. So those of you who've been talking about these communities, like you guys talked about and you guys talked about, this would really fit in, and I think we should look for those unexpected opportunities.
And I think that's really a point of looking for them locally too, as real people in our community, not just online. That often, and I think this was part of my son's interest. This is an adult community. He could be, he wasn't defined as a student. He was defined, as an adult, as a human being there, and that meant a lot. So even those other examples, like the mentor, the build mentor, I think it's the same thing of getting recognition from the community, who you are and what you're doing is really important.
Are we going to try to keep the time? Okay.
Good.